Okay, so I've been using the brand new M4 Mac Mini for a while now, and as someone who's been using an M3 Max MacBook Pro that is fully spec'd out for about a year, I'm honestly so impressed with how good this computer performs relative to its value. Today we're going to be investigating my experience with the Mac Mini by looking at the design, my performance review of the M4 chip, and then finish off with a comprehensive buyer's guide to help you understand more about what this computer is and who it's good for, and if you should end up buying this for yourself. Starting off with the design, let's first get this thing outside of its tiny, cute little box that Apple puts this in. Inside, you'll find this small, redesigned cube that is the Mac Mini, which looks just as good as it does in the renders. It amazes me how tiny the footprint of this Mac is in person. In terms of ports, we will find two USB-C ports that are 10 gigabit speeds on the front, along with a 3.5mm headphone jack, and on the back side, that's where we'll find three Thunderbolt 4 ports, Ethernet, HDMI, and the power adapter slot. If you were considering the M4 Pro Mac Mini, you would be getting Thunderbolt 5 ports instead on the back, but honestly, there's a tiny fraction of a percent of people making use of Thunderbolt 5, let alone Thunderbolt 4 at its peak performance. So I wouldn't even sweat the difference in Thunderbolt here. Also, take a look at this. That's the controversial power button placement that had the internet go crazy when it was first revealed. And no, from my experience, you cannot reach from beneath the Mac Mini to actually power it on. It is too small to actually slide your finger under there. Honestly, man, from my experience of just having this, you turn this thing on once and you're never gonna touch that area again. And if you really have to, it's not a huge deal to lift it up and then touch the bottom of it. I'm okay with the placement, but some people hate it, and that's totally okay. Anyways, I went ahead to set this up on my desk, and right away, I saw how little space this new design takes up. It's actually pretty crazy. It looks so good because of how small and compact this is. In the future, I would probably keep this Mac Mini under the desk shelf though in the long term, but because I'm filming this review, I do want to show you the machine, so I'm keeping it on top of the desk shelf for the purpose of this video. But I love the fact that after this video recording, I'm going to slide it right under there and it's just going to sit away, hidden, and it's not going to take up any space on my desk. Moving to the back side of my desk though, this is where I typically keep all of my devices plugged into, which is that CalDigit TS4 dock that you're seeing. But with how many ports this Mac Mini has on top of the available ports on my studio display, I'm actually very close to being able to simply retire my TS4 dock and take back some of the desk space underneath. The only reason why I can't just do away with the dock on my desk is because there's no SD card reader on the Mac Mini. That's only on the studio version of this desktop. So if you're like me and you make use of SD cards all the time, you'll need a dock like I have, or an SD card adapter, or just some kind of dongle that has an SD card port inside of it. Okay, so now let's get into the meat and potatoes of this review and dive into my review of the performance of the M4 chip. Before we dive deeper into this video, I want to thank my friends over at Clean My Mac for partnering with me today and helping me keep my new M4 Mac Mini running smoothly. Clean My Mac is an all-in-one solution to maintain a clean, fast, and secure Mac computer. It offers a range of really powerful modules designed to make managing your Mac effortless. Smart Care offers a quick and comprehensive scan to ensure your Mac stays in top condition. Cleanup helps you reclaim space by clearing unnecessary system files and digital junk. Protection safeguards your Mac from potential threats and vulnerabilities. Performance optimizes your system by running maintenance tasks that keeps everything running efficiently. Applications make it easy to uninstall, update, or manage your apps without leaving any leftover files on the system. And My Clutter lets you sort through your storage to remove unneeded files, helping you stay organized. And now is the perfect time to try it if you haven't already, because they are offering an exclusive 30% Black Friday discount. This deal is only available from November 29th to December 1st, so do not miss out. It's not gonna last forever. Click the link in the description down below to grab your discount and experience how much better your Mac can feel today. To lay the groundwork, I do have a base model M4 Mac Mini with 16 gigs of RAM, the regular M4 chip, and instead of 256 gigs, I do have the 512 gig model. That was not by choice. By the way, let me make that very clear. I wanted the 256 model, but it was completely sold out everywhere with a very delayed delivery date, which honestly doesn't surprise me, and I'll explain more about that when we get to the buyer's guide. Okay, so change of scenery. I thought it'd actually be a good idea to just show you how I use the Mac Mini and why I believe the M4 is really fast, a lot faster than most people anticipated, and I have a hunch that the M4 chip just might be enough these days for most people instead of going for M4 Pro or M4 Max. And I don't want to just show you benchmarks in this video because I have been guilty of that in the past. I'm sorry. So let's dive into my workflow and see how this computer performs. Okay, so when it comes to like basic stuff like opening a bunch of tabs on Safari, doing office work, opening applications, like multiple ones on your computer, this computer is really fast at doing that. Like the M4 feels faster than M3, M2, M1. Like it is a noticeably faster difference. It's kind of crazy because every year we're like, yeah, the new M chips, they feel fast. M4 actually feels quite faster. Like even if it's just in the hairs, it's noticeable. The next thing I want to show you is this application that I love to use called Gling AI. It's basically an AI video editing software that it will take all of the footage of me speaking to the camera, and it's going to do its best to transcribe the words that I'm saying and actually cut up and remove all the do-overs and mistakes that I do when I speak to the camera, because I'm not perfect. I actually have to do over the things that I say a lot, and it actually does a really good job of that. And I'm pretty confident that that application is going to make the fan on the Mac Mini go crazy, because it does that to my other MacBooks. So I'm kind of curious to see, because it's a pretty CPU and AI intensive software. So let's take a look. Okay, so we're gonna add in my 57 gigabyte project file here, and then basically the AI is now gonna kick in and actually transcribe what it's listening to, and then cut up the video for me. It usually takes about a minute or so for it to do that. Okay, so the transcribing is done, and if we go through here and just let it kind of play out. In this video, I'm starting fresh with a completely blank iPhone 16 Pro. Right now I'm just having it play in the background, because usually when I do that, that's when the Mac gets hot, and I can feel the Mac Mini temperatures actually going up. I don't think we hear any fan noise yet, but it is getting hotter. So I actually can see the internal temperature right now of the CPU. It is at 93 degrees, which is pretty high. So it's definitely under load right now. I still don't, oh no, the fans are on, listen to this. The fans did kick on, but it's actually running a lot quieter than I thought. So I think the thermal system in the Mac Mini is actually pretty efficient, because when I do the same thing on this M4 MacBook Pro and I run the same application, the fans on this go insanely loud, like extremely loud. I kind of want to show you. Okay, so I'm running the same Gling AI program right now on the MacBook Pro, and the temperature right now is at 99 degrees. And just for comparison's sake, on my Mac Mini, where the program is still running, the temperature on the Mac Mini is running a little bit lower at around the lower 90s, around 90 to 92 degrees. It's definitely running cooler than on the MacBook Pro, which is to be expected. So I don't know if you guys could hear it or not through the video, but like the fans on the M4 MacBook Pro are significantly louder doing the same AI task compared to the M4 Mac Mini. And that makes a lot of sense. Like the M4 Mac Mini does have like a nicer cooling system. There's just more space for that CPU to cool down, so the fans don't need to kick in as much, because the temperatures on the M4 MacBook Pro were approaching like 100 degrees Celsius, whereas the M4 Mac Mini for the same task was only hovering around like 92 at its peak, I believe. So pretty impressive stuff for a really affordable Mac. Okay, now I want to actually test out some gaming on the Mac, because I was invited to a New York City showcase from Apple about a week ago, where they demoed a bunch of games coming to Mac. And one of the ones I played is the one behind me here. It's called Neva. I'm running it in I believe in 5K resolution at the highest settings, and I'm excited to play it and demo it for you guys to see just how good it runs on Mac, on my basic M4 Mac Mini with 16 gigs of RAM. All right, so if you're not familiar, this is a platforming game, if you were curious. Man, this game looks so beautiful on this computer, and it's running really smooth. The frame rate is constantly at 60 FPS right now. So this dog doesn't want to jump with me. I gotta give her some encouragement. Pet her, do the jump, come on, you can do it, come on, jump over. There you go. Something else worth mentioning as we're going through all this stuff that I'm showing you today, I'm having the Mac Mini actually drive two really high quality displays. One is a 5K Apple Studio display, and then the other is a 4K gaming monitor from Asus. I think it's their, I don't remember the name of it. It's like state-of-the-art 4K OLED gaming monitor. I'll put the name on screen. Incredible monitor. But anyway, it's doing, it's driving both of these displays while giving me pretty good performance. Like that's pretty impressive. Okay, so the other big thing that I do on my Mac is obviously make and create the videos that you watch on this channel, and I use Final Cut Pro to create all the stuff that you watch. I actually have been using the M4 chip, not actually just in the Mac Mini, but also in the M4 MacBook Pro, the base model, to basically get a grip on how good this chip is for someone like me who is a professional video creator. And the best way to kind of summarize all of this is that I'm someone who has used M1, who has then moved on to M1 Pro, then M2 Pro, and then M3 Max, and then now I'm testing out M4. And what I've noticed when I've gone through all the trees of different types of chips from Apple is that, at least with this M4 chip, I'm not noticing too much of a difference between this and the M3 Max when it comes to really basic aspects of my video editing, which is cutting up videos, color grading it slightly, cleaning up the audio, those kinds of things, and just like, putting in files from the timeline and adding in and importing files. All that feels the same, which is actually a really good thing. It tells me that the M4 is actually professional ready for a lot of people looking to save money, but want to get started in video creation. Like M4 is perfect for that. Where you start to see slowdowns, or where I've started to notice slowdowns, is in render speeds. So typically on my M3 Max, my video render time would be, I would hit render and it would be done within like a minute or a couple minutes. But on M4, because there's not as many GPU cores, there's less performance cores, it's just not as powerful as a max version of a chip. Things just take longer to render, but that's okay. Like people can wait an extra 5 or 8 minutes, however long it's gonna take to get those videos rendered. That's not a huge deal, especially if you're just starting out. And then the other thing that I've noticed as well is that when you are trying to do a lot of like graphically intense effects, so you're denoising, you're adding things on screen, that's where I find the M4 chip really starts to slow down, because it just doesn't have the GPU and the performance cores necessary to make that operation smooth. Okay, so moral of the story is, regardless if you're a video editor or not, the M4 just does not have a ton of GPU cores. So it can only do so much for you before it starts to be a limiting factor that there's no GPU cores in this thing. Like my M1 Pro, MacBook Pro, is still technically a better video editing machine for me than the M4 MacBook Pro, because the M1 Pro has more GPU cores. So it can handle those extra things. Like, this is just all technicalities, right? But again, this is not me saying that the M4 is not capable. Like, you can use the M4 chip to do graphically intensive things. It's just probably gonna be slow, or slower than it should be, and it might lag, and it won't be as smooth as if you had M4 Pro or M4 Max, or even looked at M2 Pro or M3 Pro or M3 Max or M2 Max. Like those older chips, even though they don't have the 4 beside their chip name, they are still more graphically capable chips than the M4. So that's something else to consider, right? Like, you don't want to just get lost in new chips from Apple, even though it is very exciting to get lost from them. If you know you're going to be a graphic intensive person on your computer, but you don't have the money to get M4 Pro or M4 Max, consider looking at M3 Max or M2 Max. Like, those are still gonna be better chips graphically than M4. Okay, so now let's move on to my buyer's guide, where I'm gonna help you figure out what kind of model to get if you are dead set on an M4 Mac Mini. Right out of the gate, I think the base model with 16 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of SSD is an incredible deal at $599. If you can make 256 gigs work for your needs, like, you're rolling, you're killing it, because you're gonna be saving a ton of money. But honestly, I don't think that's realistic for most people. I just think 256 is just not enough storage, especially in the long run, especially if you plan to keep this for many years to come. So you really only have two options here. Number one, you can upgrade the storage directly through Apple, which costs $200 for 512 or $400 for 1 terabyte. While Apple's onboard storage is super fast and it's just incredibly convenient to have that all housed into the Mac Mini, these upgrades can seriously reduce the overall value of your purchase. A better option for many people is just to opt for external storage, which is much more affordable and you get more storage per dollar than what Apple is charging you. I'll link my favorite recommendations below to help you guys save some money there. Now let's talk about the RAM. The base model comes with 16 gigs of RAM, which I think is the sweet spot for most people right now. Upgrading to 24 gigs will cost you an extra $200, and going all the way to 32 gigs is gonna be about $400. Whether you need more RAM depends on your workflow and budget, but honestly, for everyday tasks, for basic creative work, for coding, for just all the things really, 16 gigs should be plenty. Personally, I would probably go for 24 gigs because it's one of those upgrades you can't really change later, and it helps your Mac grow with you as your needs evolve, because typically you will demand more of your computer over time. That's just naturally what happens as you find new programs you're interested in or new things that you want to do on it. But here's the catch though. Once you start upgrading the RAM or even the storage like I suggested earlier, you're quickly approaching the price of the base model M4 Pro Mac Mini, which comes standard with 24 gigs of RAM, 512 gigs of SSD, and a significantly more powerful M4 Pro chip with more CPU and GPU cores. So if you're even considering upgrading the RAM or the storage, it might just make more sense to go all the way to M4 Pro instead if you can afford it, as it is truly a much better computer in the long run in my opinion. But obviously we need to acknowledge, in the real world, every few $100s means a lot to all of us. So even if you are very close to the cost of M4 Pro, maybe that price difference is what's going to be the deal breaker anyways. So if you're dead set on the M4 Mac Mini, that's just sort of where your budget lands. Here is my personal ideal configuration if I was to go out and buy this myself. I would go with 24 gigs of RAM and actually 1 terabyte of SSD. Like I said, 256 is too limiting for onboard memory. 512 is okay. I think a lot of people could get away with that, but not me. I want at least 1 terabyte in there because my project files are just way too big and I do want that extra headroom built in for long-term use. That being said, you can absolutely stick with 256 or 512 and supplement it with external storage like I suggested earlier. In this configuration, I'd actually still use external storage, but it's because I'm installing a bunch of programs and I just have things that I actually need on board on the Mac at all times. The 512 and 256 is just not gonna cut it for me. As for RAM, I recommend maxing it out as much as your budget allows. It's the one thing you can't really upgrade later. There's no such thing as external RAM options. You're stuck with what you get. I think 24 gigs strikes the right balance for most people from a long-term perspective, but if you can stretch your budget to 32 gigs, even better. That's the right purchase if you can afford it. But again, if all you can get is 16 gigs, that's fine too. Just remember, all of this stuff comes down to your budget and how much you're willing to invest into this M4 setup. There's literally no wrong answer here. I'm just trying to guide your hand and give you, tell you how my brain is working when I'm thinking about all this stuff. Just let your budget guide your purchase first, and then reinforce what upgrades your budget can afford with how you plan to actually use the computer. If you do all of that and you listen to all the stuff in this video, you're gonna be set to make the right decision for yourself when you go out to buy this computer from Apple. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video helpful. If you have more questions, drop a comment and I'll do my best to answer them down below. Subscribe if you're brand new to my channel. Comment hashtag I made it if you did finish the video, and I'll talk to all of you guys in the next one. Peace.